Welcome back to Forever Together, your ultimate guide for building a strong foundation for your marriage. I'm your host for today, Favor, and today we will be diving into 3 crucial aspects for a successful marriage: communication, conflict resolution, and shared goals. We are thrilled today to introduce you to 2 beautiful and amazing couples with us here on the show. Mr. and Mrs. Olagoke, who have been married for 5 years,
Yes.
and Mr. and Mrs. Daniel, who just got married 6 months precisely, right? Hello everyone, and how are you doing today?
We are fine, thank you, Favor.
Are you excited to share your experience with us today on the show?
Absolutely.
That is amazing. So before we go on, I would like to remind our viewers that you can send in your questions throughout the show with the hashtag Forever Together. Our first topic today is going to be on communication. We all know that communication is a cornerstone for every solid relationship. Mrs. Olagoke, as a married couple for 5 years now, what has been your biggest communication challenge so far?
Okay, so I would say timing. You know how it is. Sometimes Hamed, whenever he gets back from work, he always wants to discuss about our budget, and I'm like, can I just change out of my outfit first? Yeah.
She's not wrong, although I'm always excited with ideas. So anytime I come back from work, I always want to share any idea I have immediately with her. And I believe that there pros and cons, but it has been working for us.
That's great.
So we've also scheduled we've also set aside weekends. In fact, on Sunday, I and Hamed decided to talk about our saving goals, and sometimes you have to rest, take a rest first, but then it has been productive.
That is quite insightful. So, Mr. Olagoke, how else have you worked on your communication skills so far?
And we started this thing known as pause and reflect. For example, last week, my wife was spending more time with her friends, and instead of me to be frustrated and express that frustration, I took a step back to reflect and think about our own perspective. So, and I found out later that she was actually spending time with her friends that was going through a rough time. So with that pause and reflect, I could decipher the issue and we communicate that with each other, and that has helped to prevent a potential argument.
Wow, that's a great strategy. So right now we'll be taking our first message here on Forever Together, and it goes like this. Hi, I'm Amina. I'm wondering how to approach sensitive topics with my partner without causing an argument. That is a very lovely question, Amina, and I'll be throwing that question to our newly married couple, Mr. and Mrs. Daniel. Welcome again.
Thank you very much.
So how have you handled sensitive conversations so far? Starting with you, Mrs. Daniel.
Okay, for a start, I'll say that we both have learned to be vulnerable before each other. We share our weakness and our fears together. And it's actually scary though for it to be weak before somebody, but then it's my husband, so I had to just talk to him, and so long as I can recall, it has been so great.
It worked perfectly.
Yes, it worked perfectly well for us.
Mr. Daniel?
Yeah, the thing we do is we actually created a room for this kind of conversation because it's very intimate, and it actually allow a space for each other to voice out their minds, and we agree to actually tackle this kind of issues together. And the tone is very very important, and the accommodation of such questions or issues like that, you must be able to ready for it.
And also to add to that, we also learn to appreciate each other whenever we actually do something commendable. Like if he gets to do something I like, or he buys me something, I learn to say thank you. I learn to appreciate him. And that's by doing so, it helps. It encourages him to do more, and gives a little bit spice to our relationship.
Alright, those are very excellent strategies. Thank you all for that input. So before we move on to our second issue that we'll be diving into, let's hear from our counselor, Mrs. Anne.
Communication is the lifeblood of any relationship. The moment you stop talking, you have reached the beginning of the end. In fact, you're better off constantly arguing than not talking at all. Studies have shown that 93% of couples who opted for divorce had gotten to the point where they had lost the desire to talk. once communication dies, the relationship follows.
Now let's move on to conflict resolution. Mr. Daniel, what's a significant conflict that you and your wife have faced so far?
Like just common sense. What I'm not finished. When it comes to me, I love it. It's money. It's money. For me, I love to save for future, but love it. Yeah.
Women love money.
Love it. What? Life is too short. Like, I love enjoying myself. I love going out. I like spending on myself. That's all. It makes the marriage more spicy and good. But then,
Alright, I guess that's a common problem in marriages and in relationships, right? So how did you resolve it?
So we come up with having this what we call fund. Everything has to come with budget. So the budget for projects, things, house of chores, for fun, because you really need it as couples. All work, no play makes couple a dog couple.
Mrs. Daniel.
so I think that's, like you just said, that's what we actually came up with, discussing our goals and setting budgets for our necessities.
That's a very beautiful compromise, a great one. So let's take our second message here on Forever Together, and it goes like this. Hello, I'm Emeka. My fiance and I often argue about housework. Any advice? Another beautiful question from one of our viewers today. So I'm going to be throwing that question to Mr. and Mrs. Olagoke. Have you faced similar challenges in your marriage?
Yeah, absolutely. So earlier in our marriage, I felt I was the only person doing the house chores, and then it led to some form of resentment.
Actually, I didn't even see it as an issue until my wife brought it up. So we sat down together and we created a chore chart based on our schedules and preferences, so that we can take each chores according to our capacity and time.
Yeah, and also we approached it as a team problem actually. So what we did actually is that whoever cooks doesn't have to do the dishes. So sometimes it's a race to the kitchen.
That's a very great way to handle that. So before we move on to our next issue on ground, we are going to be hearing from our counselor again, Mrs. Anne. Over to you, Mrs. Anne.
So why does something as simple as talking become so difficult? It points down to 3 factors: honesty, vulnerability, and control. We're afraid to be honest with our feelings and expectations because we do not trust our partner to handle our truth. We hold back from communicating because we're afraid to be vulnerable in front of someone else. Or we hold back because we're afraid of losing control of our emotions and saying the wrong things. Do you know what the common thread in these 3 issues are? Fear? Close. Lack of trust in our person and our partner.
All right, now let's discuss shared goals. Mr. Olagoke, how have you and Mrs. Olagoke here aligned your goals since you got married?
We practice what is known as dream big, plan small. For example, we are planning to get our own house because where we have been living has been so uncomfortable for us. But we know that this is not something we can achieve in 1 year. So we plan that, okay, well, we will get a land maybe in 1 year. So the remaining years we use it to plan about getting the project going on. So this has been used as a strategy to tackle all other projects in our life. So we have used this over and over again, and it has been working so far.
Yeah, and we've also been flexible too. In fact, when I got promoted sometime last month, we sat down to discuss how we're going to increase our savings, and it's all about adapting to changes.
Absolutely.
That's fantastic. So, Mr. and Mrs. Daniel, over to you. Have you guys discussed long-term goals so far?
When it comes to goals, as couples, this is a very, very important issue where you two need to discuss first before you guys starting on this kind of journey. And when it comes to me and love rate, actually we agreed to see to what each one of us wants to achieve as a person and what we want together as a couple, what we want to see in our lives. So when it comes to projects like that, we actually agree to discuss about it and set goals on how to achieve them.
Okay, to add to that also, it's not just about the tangible things. We also actually this year now we set a goal of I chose to learn cooking this year. While he planned on starting up a little business for himself. By we supporting each other, it makes it easy going for us. So that's one of the way we actually plan ourselves.
I love that. I love that. So let's take one last message before we wrap up the show for today. The message goes like this. Hi, I'm Blessing. I'm wondering how to maintain individuality in a marriage without growing apart. That's a very insightful question, Miss Blessing. Let's take it down to our newly married couple, Mr. and Mrs. Daniel. So, Mrs. Daniel, how would you handle this?
So for a start, I'll say that you being a person as a whole is very important. That's your individuality. So marriage is made of two different imperfect people that comes together. So it doesn't mean that for the fact that I'm married, I will lose myself or I'll stop doing some things I normally do that makes me happy. So like since we got married, I still belong to my book club, and Daniel still belongs to his football team. So it's just we learning to accommodate each other. It's not that it's a bad thing, but we learn to fit in each other's space.
Okay.
So actually, in addition to that, Lovers used to be someone who loves to read a lot, and it can be very very boring for me. But I've learned to read. I've learned to do that also. I've been loving books. I won't like, and she has actually been going out with me to watch football. So.
Yeah.
Mr. and Mrs. Olagoke.
So in our case, actually, we do go out on dates, and then we take turns in planning the event, and this is one of the ways we try to share in each other's truth. Actually,
And to add to what my wife said, we have learned to check in each other's goals and individuality, and these has keep us connected and keep us going so far over the years.
All right, those are all wonderful insights. So let's take another marvelous insight from our counselor, Mrs. Anne.
We talk beliefs and values. Our beliefs and values form the center of our decisions, our actions, and ultimately our identity. If you intend to spend the rest of your life with someone else, it is important to be fully aware of who they are.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Anne. It's been wonderful having you on this show. So before we wrap up, I would like each of you to share one piece of advice for the prospective couples out there that are planning their marriage. What would you say to them?
okay. I would say first of all, you need to embrace imperfection. Funny enough, we had our anniversary just last weekend. I bought our anniversary food, but then I was actually expecting him to get angry, but instead we had to order out.
Yeah, and also you have to cultivate emotional intelligence, because sometimes when Joy is down and she's feeling sober, I always ask her sometimes if she needs solution or she just need a listening ear, and this has made a big difference for us.
Mr. and Mrs. Daniel?
Mr. and Mrs. Olagwe actually, spoken very well. But this I will just give out to young couples that are about to get married out there, that see, you are two different people, coming together to become one. So as much as that oneness is always well preached out there inside the world, you still have to like recognize the facts, what people want and what people don't want, and put into conversation those individuality when you just always try to meet at midpoint.
Yeah, and in addition to that, I would say that communication is a very key thing in a relationship. We should learn to communicate our fears. Being weak is not a crime. Being vulnerable is not a crime. So I'll say that if you communicate well, then there's a lead way to success to the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for all those beautiful and wonderful insights. Listeners, we hope this helps your journey. This helps you on your journey to forever together. Remember, a strong marriage is built on effective communication, effective conflict resolution, and shared goals, and maintaining your individuality. This is Favor signing out from Forever Together. Until next time, keep growing in love.